This video is for home sellers who are moving out of their home before it is going to be put up for sale and are considering whether it's worth it to stage the house. I used to be sort of anti-staging, but that's because I didn't understand what staging was. I thought that was when they put the fancy dishes out on the dining room table and turned the covers of the bed down and put a tray on with plastic rose petals and pretend food. That isn't actually what staging is. That's just goofiness. Staging is making sure there are furnishings in the rooms in the house that allow a buyer to see what the space could look like, how it might be organized, and also, and this is hugely important, make the photographs of the space more interesting and compelling to buyers. Remember that at least 95% of why someone chooses to come and look at a house is because the pictures of it online appealed to them in some way. No matter how nice a house is, pictures of vacant spaces never come across very well. Now, obviously, if you have junky or shabby furniture or it's really messy or dirty, pictures of that won't come across well either. But if you have a relatively clean place and you stage it, it will always look better than pictures of the space empty. So there are two ways to stage a property. One is by actually bringing furnishings in, and the other is something called virtual staging, in which photographs of the empty spaces are sent out to digital wizards, as far as I'm concerned, and the agent and or the seller can choose a style. Let's say it's Victorian or contemporary or Swedish or early American, something so that the style of the furnishings they choose go together. And you can say, I want art on the walls and plants in the corner. I want a coffee table. You can say which wall you want the TV on or the bed on or whatever. And these pictures come back with these furnishings virtually, digitally added to them, and they're amazingly realistic looking. So virtual staging is obviously much less expensive than real staging. The one disadvantage, obviously, is that when the buyer comes to look at the house, the furnishings are not there. They can look at the pictures online to remind themselves of a way that the room might look, but when they're in the space, they are looking at unfurnished rooms. One way that I sometimes try to soften that blow is to, if I have virtually staged, have the photographs printed and enlarged and then mounted on a large piece of foam core, maybe 24 by 36, and then set up on an easel in that room so that when the people are in that space, whether it's a bedroom or a dining room, they can just look at that easel and say, oh yeah, that's how this room might be arranged. You also don't have to choose between virtual and real staging. You can do some of each. Usually the prevailing wisdom says that the primary suite should be staged with real furniture, so a bed and nightstands and lamps and dressers and that kind of thing. Many people choose not to bother staging the other bedrooms because they seem sort of obvious where you might put things, but I will sometimes virtually stage those other bedrooms, or at least some of the other bedrooms. And how much you spend and which route you go depends, I think, in part on the price point of the home. Obviously, a higher price point will give you more bang for your buck for the cost of staging it than a house is going to sell at a lower price point. But you also really want to consider things like condition. If a house could use a coat of paint or the floors really aren't in great shape, the photographs of those spaces empty are going to be much, much worse looking than if some of those surfaces are blocked or covered by actual furnishings or even virtual furnishings for the pictures. Because remember, it's the pictures that bring people in. So if you have a house that's a little bit shabby, it will definitely look better if there are carpets and end tables and sofas in the space than just these pictures of this empty space where you can see all of the imperfections and wear in the carpeting or floors and on the walls. So staging is definitely something that's sort of a continuum. There are all different ways to do it. And again, you can always combine virtual and real staging, but it's something that if your house is going to be vacant or if certain rooms are going to be vacant, it's something you should definitely speak to your agent about.